August 2nd, 2022. Time for me to start panicking. Summer's over, Anthony. How do you feel about that?
You know what's good about getting old? I'll tell you on the other side.
All right.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Hey, everybody, this is episode 665 of No Vacancy Podcast. Thank you, Dr. Producer Suzanne, for letting me know that. Welcome. That's Anthony Melchiori. I'm Glenn Hausman. What's the good thing about getting old, Anthony?
That at the last minute, when you're doing something in Manhattan, you can call your friend and say, oh, before I have my meeting, I need a room to do my podcast. And before you know it, you have free parking and the presidential suite at the Marriott Marquis in New York.
That's if that's all it took about getting old, I'd love it. I'd love it too. So that's really awesome. So Anthony, it's great to see you. I love that you're at the Marriott Marquis. We got to do another show from there at some point. It's such a great venue, particularly.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
It's
funny. I was walking and a guest noticed me and I was like, oh my God, this hotel doesn't need any, this hotel is great. And all I was thinking was, it is great because it was just renovated.
And I love, and for those of you who haven't been following the story of the reinvention of the Marriott Marquis in New York, they really took a deep dive on that 8th floor, for example, which serves as their lobby, reconfigured and reinvented so much. And they've got these amazing windows that overlook Times Square, and they weren't maximizing that space before. Now it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and the whole flow of that 8th floor, I was sitting waiting for somebody to take me to the room. And from tourist to corporate, like the flow of the 8th floor works beautifully. And before, when somebody said, hey, you want to go to the Marriott Marquis? I'd be like, no, thank you. Now it's like, it's a pleasure to come here.
Yeah. All right. So, Anthony, you and I have been having the opportunity to be doing a lot of travel again lately. And I, in particular, have been going to a ton of industry conferences and events. Most notably, I was at High Tech and a bunch of others in June and May. Before that, July, not so much. But, there are events happening. Coming up in August, I've got a couple of conventions that I'm going to be going to as well. And it's got me thinking, what is going on with events? What's going on with the hospitality business in other parts of the world, right? That's why I thought it'd be great to tap into my friends and cohorts that I also do some work with over at Adapters. And that is my friend Sean Worker and producer extraordinaire, Art Lewry, who I've gotten to know these guys over the last, it's been 7-8 years or so, guys, that we've gotten to know each other.
Oh, it's got to be at least that. But, clearly Anthony aged much better than the rest of us. I mean, by far.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Anthony, Art and I spent a lot of time together. So Art is all about, catering to my my peculiar food needs and stuff like that. Basically, Sean hired us to do all this great content. I didn't care about the content at all. I just cared about where we were going to eat. Of course, the content happened, but it was more about, the meals and stuff like that. So, what do you do? So it's great to see you guys.
There was a lot of food. I think you guys ate a lot of food in a lot of places. Yeah.
I'm still talking about this fish I had in Puerto Rico.
Okay, so, just so you know, you're all talking inside baseball. Me and the audience have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Well, we're gonna get the audience on board right now, guys. You just recently came back from the Urban Living Festival, and Anthony, that was born out of the Service Department Summit, an event that the three of us used to go to, typically in Europe. You'd hop around different places. One of those events that really exposed me to understanding what that whole service department world was about. But it's become the Urban Living Festival because it's no longer about services apartments. It's really about, a residential experience and hospitality and all these new permutations that have been born over the last 7-8 years or so to better reflect about how we're living, working, and playing in the 21st century. So, Sean, how was it getting back to those events? How's our friend Piers over there doing? Tell us a little bit about that event, and then I've got some fun footage to show as well.
Yeah, Piers and the team, George and Eloise and the team are doing some really great things. I think probably the big themes out of it is it's maturing and it's moving quickly. When you look at some of the, there's some of the stories that are very similar to the Americas, which is, consolidation, aggregation. There's not enough footprint out there to buy. And then the other themes are that the asset managers are having to actually work the assets a little bit more. And I think they realize that in this next cycle, that you can't just buy them and sit on them anymore. You got to do something with them. And so there's some other themes like that. But at the end of the day, it's this big evolution and this flywheel effect that has occurred in the marketplace that is across the majority of Europe and then part of the Middle East. That is it's not just revenge travel. It's before times and after times, and now we're kind of in the afternoon times. So here we go again.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation. I mean, you remember the conversations we were having in New York and London. At the Service Department Summit.
And these events that he's referred to took place pre-pandemic. Art, please
absolutely.
Continue.
And this is sort of going back a little way, but we were at that stage of what is a service department? That was the conversation with people. The conversation has absolutely changed. The people in the room have changed.
Yeah.
And their mindset has changed. It's very, very interesting.
So what is the big change? What is the big change?
Anthony, one of the biggest changes is that, to Art's point and pivoting off that, is that some of the players have changed, the mindset and the sense of urgency. And the other part is, we're just seeing Neil Davies there, a really smart architect in the space of ESG and blending that into the conversation. That's a big game changer in the conversation, has dominated conversations. And what's a key learning out of that is the metrics associated with unpacking E, S, and G are so narrow and so thin. They're in a TBD, to be defined model. And that's a key learning that's impacting a lot of the conversations across every one of the panels. It weaves its way into the conversation.
Yeah. And the investors are in the room, more than ever. It's the investment people there, and that it's a big issue.
So for our audience, just so everybody's kind of on the same page, I want to make clear I'm on the same page. You're talking about taking a building and basically putting resources in that building that kind of like an Airbnb, or to kind of make it feel like a hotel, but make it feel like an apartment, whether it be leisure travel or corporate travel. Am I correct?
I think it's maybe we expand that. It is a very separate category than the Airbnb-like models. Of course, there are super hosts that are inside Airbnb that are professionalizing that particular category. These are built to purpose service departments that have a hybrid, if you will, of a typical apartment that we would all know that you'd see at Greystar, as an example, with multifamily in the United States. And then translating that into a accommodation style hospitality suite, like a hotel suite. I mean, it's top-notch design.
So one of the things that I'm seeing, and I'm actually working with a partner on giving him some consulting services in Tennessee, and they're taking what you're talking about, they're converting it. And what I'm seeing time and time again is it turns into a hotel. It turns into they're going to the third parties. They're just trying to get whatever rate they can. They don't really know their market segment because they're not really contributing to the star report. I just got a new client, same problem. No star report because nobody's contributing in that market because it's this kind of service. So how does it become something that's different from a revenue standpoint, that all of a sudden you're just not chasing to the bottom in order to make your nut at the end of the month?
So maybe just take it in parts. The pandemic has shone a light on a category that, candidly, one of the better outcomes out of a pandemic was that the light was shone on alternative or adjacent accommodations. So when you think about that, the consumer is driving the expectation that the technology and the baseline services, be it keyless entry, be it the right lighting, the right Wi-Fi, the right cleanliness levels, that's now a baseline standard that is similar to any type of hospitality product. So it's about 70% of the same, right? So it looked like a hotel suite. The difference is that last 20% of use type, where, if you're going to go, and you might consider that now as a corporate stay, where you're, instead of a week in a hotel, you might do a week in a service department in central London or central Paris, and you've got a residential style experience about the same price as a hotel today, but you're getting a much different perspective of your stay. You're not getting anybody banging on your door at 8 o'clock in the morning so that you can make the 3 o'clock check-in. You're getting that sense of place and that sense of being in a community, and that I think has been an awakening. And I would also say that similar approach to student living, senior living, and the other categories. It's becoming far more homogenous on a horizontal level, so that the theme at the Urban Living Festival or at adjacent spaces at Questex as IHIF is their conversations about accommodation types and experiences, and there's a lot in common on a horizontal level, with the last mile being a very different type of profile of persona of user.
Well, you're the only person to ever explain that well, so I can understand it. And now I can actually articulate what you just said. So thank you for explaining that to me.
And one of the things that I like.
We're going to leave now. We should leave.
Yeah, we're done.
Definitely leave on top. One of the things I remember when we were working together, and Art, you were actually working with the brand that Sean was CEO at the time, and helping do a lot of creation behind the scenes there. What was interesting to me was one concept what you had when you're thinking about some of these consulting firms with big financial firms. Instead of getting one space per person, you could have these individual spaces that have 3-4 bedrooms to it. Everybody has a lock on their own bedroom door, so it's secure.
Yeah.
But then they have all of these shared spaces. And for a company, let's just say a random company like Merrill Lynch or something like that, it becomes much more affordable for them to put up those people for a longer period of time. Is that a good observation, Art?
Absolutely. And I think the other observation that I think surprised us a little is, Canary Wharf, I think, we always think of it's finance. It's like London 2.0, a little bit sterile. That's the impression I've always had of it. With our visit, the fact this event was right in the heart of that, with our visit this time, it just felt completely different. There were families, there were, many more people, there was artwork going on. I think it's the biggest collection of outdoor artwork now in Europe. But there were sort of events going on, families, the fact I didn't know is I think the Middle Harbour part is the most densely populated part of Britain.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And absolute moving on from, and I think it's all part of the plan, it's very clever, but moving on from finance. There are more tech tenants in Canary Wharf than finance now.
Wow. So let me ask you a question.
All these,
Yeah.
In 10 years from now, are we in the same situation in this segment that we are in the hotel business? 5 people own everything. 5 companies own everything.
That's a great question.
I don't think so. It's there's a different underlying investment model where these are traditionally smaller business types. It's fragmented. I don't think fragmented in a bad way. It's kind of regionalized. Particularly in Europe. I think that is a potential in the United States where it's more homogenous because there's different barriers to entry. That being said, what I would come back to is there is a trend now in Europe and has been going on for a while, and they just haven't really labeled it yet. But it's right now, the tentative term is buy to rent, right? Or build to rent, which would be the equivalent of multifamily in the United States, right? So, for instance, Greystar, as an example, is in Dublin, and they're in multiple cities in Europe, and they have a traditional multifamily model. You rent the apartment, and in some cases, possibly some of those are leased out to serviced apartment models. So these kind of hybrid sources of supply are very common. And that's very hard to aggregate because a lot of their inventory isn't fixed like a hotel. They will scale up and scale based on demand.
Yeah. Sean, if you could stop making sense, I'd appreciate it. Listen, every day I run a show and I try to learn something. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm getting a real good education, which is important because a lot of my clients are asking me this information and I'm not really, I'm familiar with the segment, but there's a lot of fakers out there. There's a lot of people that are just labeling stuff and they're just not really kind of servicing it properly. Does it happen? like most people don't know Best Western is a nonprofit, right? Does it happen where something like that happens for this industry, where a brand comes in and says, listen, we're a big brand, we're going to brand everything. And whether it's 20 apartments or 100 apartments or even 3 apartments, you know, you're under this brand, and now we're nonprofit. We work for all your owners, but we give you a system. We give you a system for purchasing. We give you a system for everything. Is that something that's happening? Is that something that can happen?
So what we're thinking about, therefore, is a process, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it's Best Western or luxury hotels of the world or Relais Chateau, you know, some of it is distribution heavy, some of it is recognition heavy. So it could be a soft brand like Best Western or one of the others I mentioned. That's more than likely the case, because it's inefficient for the management of distribution. Mm-hmm. And equally, I'd say the technology is accelerating at such a pace that the average owner would be immensely distracted and hugely inefficient by trying to manage that. So there probably is, I think it's a very good point, Anthony, that is probably a new market for a lot of American companies that have that capability to offer their services, because there's an economic conversation that you can have about that rather than a restrictive brand covenant or some form of, you know, franchise and licensing model. So yeah, there's probably an opportunity there. There probably is.
That's an interesting way of thinking about all of this, because I think the major franchise companies are very used to doing things a very, very specific way. And now with the corporatization of that alternative accommodations industry, there's a chance for them to come together. But the major companies have to think a little bit differently. They have to think about like some of these upstarts. For example, you know, our friends over at a Mint House, who I always use as an example, they take over portions of a building, right? We did a show at their Wall Street property, and since then they've taken over another floor because it's been so successful. But you can't have a typical franchise agreement at all, because you can take 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors, and then, things have changed. Now let's go back to 2 floors or whatever it is. Plus, it opens up the opportunity, gentlemen, that I think you could have multiple brands, which we've talked about over the past few years, within one structure, right, Art?
Right.
Yep, absolutely. And that was, you know, for instance, we visited the landmark Pinnacle, which is the tallest residential building in Europe, isn't it, Sean? That's sort of 75 floors.
Allegedly
so.
Yeah.
Allegedly so. And Core in there, I think they got 162 apartments. And it's very much this hybrid idea. It's almost like a bar chart that you can scale, you know, over time. So yeah, very interesting.
You know what seems interesting is, if you look back at the history of the hospitality business, we didn't know what yield management was and revenue management was in 1990. When I came into this business, we were just learning those words. There were no revenue managers and things like that. And then TripAdvisor came, and hotels and Expedia, they all came. And then all the brands said, oh crap, let's get our point system in place, because they're stealing all our share. But they've already had the customer, because they spent billions of dollars worth of advertising. And as we know, customers make decisions in 3 seconds or less on where they're staying, and they just want to go to one-stop shopping. With what's happening in this segment is that it is so scattered, and that you have to kind of do a little research, and you have to look, and you have to do direct marketing if you're the person that owns the building. So it seems to me not only that it's a good idea, what we mentioned before, but it's going to happen, because it has to happen, because consumers like one-stop shopping and everything to be easy and taken care of for them. What say you? Are making any sense at all?
Probably just a little twist. I was moderating a panel of the future of tech, and you think prop tech, and maybe pivot to tech in a minute, is that the legacy assets that we probably generally refer to, that has, you know, the systems you would expect, be it an Oracle-led system, or something that proprietary from one of the brands, or the Amadeus relationships that are now developing within the super brands, is that there's other companies like Muse and Apaleo. And I moderated the future of property at Apaleo in Munich there a couple of, I don't know, maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. And these platforms are coming in and democratizing access. It's a license basis, it's a fee per month basis, and they add a store. You know, if you're familiar with the Microsoft store, the Apple store, that now is being created for support as a PMS system, an RMS system, a user experience front office system that can be used for a touchless building with one host, and it's all done on mobile phones and iPads.
Right.
And that's all coming off a central kind of an aircraft carrier. You come from the military, Anthony. It's an aircraft carrier. It acts as this floating platform where it all happens, and that's where the central control is. But you can add bits and subtract bits depending on the mission, and that's what Apaleo and Muse are doing. And you probably saw that partnership and pilot that Accor is doing with Muse, and that's probably the way of the future, where the barrier to signing up a franchise is not 250,000. You can turn it on in 3 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Melissa Sloan is saying, hey, customers want innovation outside those core hospitality players because they're frustrated with the brands. This will come from a completely new model, and investors will want the same. And we're seeing that right now play out. I know Melissa asked me to do this particular video. I will get to it, but we're seeing friction now between AHOA and the major brands, most notably with Marriott. Not going to get into that right now, but it is an indication that there are investors out there that are not satisfied with the same old, and they're looking for something different. And this whole universe opens up a world of opportunity for them.
Yeah, you take the Sonesta deal, right? Yeah. Won't get into that, but the point being is that the great news about this is that the models are there to be updated and then new models created.
Right.
And that's a relatively new phenomena, which is we're at the bottom end of that curve. And that's what's exciting about being in TTH. And I agree, it's not just, we at the Adapters believe you got to look over the fence. We just had an interview as an example with Dara Meath, who's the CIO and with Conair. Now, not Conair, the jail ship. Okay?
Oh, now I'm terribly disappointed.
Yeah, I know. I saw you going there. Conair, right? We know that their products are, 4,000 employees, billions of dollars business, and they're all about thinking about what do they serve to these broader categories that work. Not just smart technology, but the practical stuff, a good coffee machine, a great hair dryer. We get lost sometimes in the fact that it's all tech. Well, of course it's tech, but the basics have to work. So that where I'm heading with that is practicality. The door is wide open for innovation and wide open for adaptation of existing services that can aggregate senior living, that can aggregate and make services available for prop tech that we've never seen before. I mean, here's an example. Anything past 7 nights gets complicated for companies like some of the payment engines for for Bookings.com. 28 nights gets even more complicated. Right. And so now there's payment engines that are stepping in that can easily handle that type of transaction and then allocate it much like some of these loans you see, from Hum and others that spreads the payment over 28 days. Well, that's new to this space. It's not new to retail. It's not new to manufacturing, and it's not new to online Amazon, but it's new to our space. Yet, that's where some of these nuances and big trends about using different types of currency in native capability is all coming into the marketplace. So anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur out there, what a great time to get into TTH and fix some of these issues.
And to your point, Sean, and I don't know where this is going to land, but you just opened up 37,000 questions in my brain, and I'll try to get all 37,000 into one question. The power of the brands and the power of what they give to hotels is being taken away by the Amazons of the world. You know how many people I work with, my clients, that they're like, hey, I send them to this company that typically work like American Hotel Register. Like, well, I can get it much cheaper on Amazon. Marketing, let's use this marketing company. Well, I went to Fiverr and I made my logo for $3. So there's so many different ways now to control your own destiny. That's maybe more a statement than a question. But to go back to your original question, from the brand to the independent hotel, there's not a lot of value that the owners are seeing. Now, the problem is, this is my specific question. Do owners want control or they don't want control? That's what's driving, I think, me crazy when I'm looking at the way when they purchase a hotel, purchase a brand. It's like, oh, I know the banks need the brand and all that, but like owners want to just pick up a check at the end of the month, or they want full control, or just somewhere in the middle. And right now, they want the brands to do more, but they also want to keep their hands off, or do they want more control? I'm a little confused on what the owner wants.
Right. Guys,
I think it's also about defining who the owner is. You know, if you're an institutional owner, you have different motivations because of your financial structure and the mandate of your fund.
I'm talking about the gentleman that may be a member of a HOA and has 6 or 7 hotels.
Right. So I think a couple of things. One is, what a great time to be a individual owner or cluster owner of accommodation assets generally. It's a great time because it's been democratized and accessible. I think the biggest problem for an owner of that profile and persona is the abundance of choice. It's that choice conundrum. And so you know, it's like when you buy insurance. If you offer 10 types of insurance, nobody buys. If you get it down to 3, you pick the middle one because you know what, it's probably safe. Right. So there's probably even another business there, Anthony, that says, you know, how do you take the Amazon model, and then you take all of these services that are available to an individual owner, everything from outsourcing laundry to distribution to design to key locks to all the tech, and getting that so it's kind of buymybestservice.com for that type of owner. Because what we're seeing in our, you know, you know this better than anybody, you know, it's paralyzing owners because there's so much choice to make that happen. Yeah. And there's a real your take on it, because we're doing all these interviews and stuff.
I think, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of choice, or the other word is confusion, I might use there. You know, there's just, and fear. You know, they're hanging on to fear, hanging on to legacy systems. You know, they need to make these little leaps. Yeah, I'd absolutely go along with that.
Yeah, really interesting stuff that we're seeing out there, and I think that the market's going to drive solutions for each of those individual owners and be able eventually to create better scenarios. So no matter what type of owner you want to be, people will do it. But if you flip it aside to the consumer, Anthony, go ahead.
At the end of the day, it's all going to go back to Blackstone, so that's all that matters.
All right, that's true. By the end of 2024, they'll own absolutely everything. So I guess the whole conversation is moot, right?
There's a fund for that somewhere. So,
they're going to be. Listen, they're the Amazon of real estate, right? But but
you know what? They've done a lot of good for real estate.
They've done great. It's not a criticism at all. It's a great thing. It's zero criticism. It's all love. You know, when it comes down to this segment, it really is, to me. Again, I'm not talking about the institutional people. I'm talking about the Amazon effect. I think Len said it. Is when you go buy a pair of shoes or a shirt or whatever, it says, will this fit if I get a large, or will it be a little bit big or a little small? That little thing that they did revolutionized everything, because then I started buying stuff off of Amazon because it gave me indication. Same thing in this segment, or even in the hotel business. It's like, I want one-stop shopping, and then I want to know exactly what I should choose.
Right.
That's like, tell me what I should choose. Tell me I should choose a large even though I'm a medium. Like, that's what, like, in right now, you know, I have a revenue management business with my partner, Jeremy. And we're always up against companies that say, well, we got new technology. We got this great technology. We got that technology. We revolutionized revenue management. And we continually beat the living crap out of them in market share because we have something that you can't put into a computer, right? We have human interaction with the computer and with those systems that they put in. So if you can get a great system, but then put that human interaction, and I think Amazon does that great by those reviews and by those indications, I think that's where we're going to fall. And I don't know if that means anything. I just need to get that out.
Right.
Yeah. When, you know, to your point about that, again, another interesting angle on that, it's an interesting two-side conversation here, and it's the same coin with us all here. 65% of European assets are unbranded, right? So
Yeah.
that's the inverted in the United States.
Yeah.
So looking for these best practices of how to create, in your case, it's a great example. There's always the customer that wants high touch as well as high product quality, right? So that's a
But
category.
isn't that every customer?
No.
You know, it's not. You know, if you take Amazon, that they're, you know, they've a fully verticalized system. If you take Marriott, well, what they're doing with Amadeus, they're basically taking an in-house partner to take out probably the most complicated portion of their day-to-day life. Okay, so they're kind of outsourcing and partnering. Now, is Amadeus who's the customer for Amadeus? Is it Marriott, the franchise machine, or is it the Marriott owner that has 7 Marriott mixed use, mixed brand, or is it the institution that has 500 Marriotts? That's confusing to me as to how that continues to service, and I'm sure there's a method. The separation, going back to your point, is I think there's two things. One is if you take mid-sized companies like Remington and others like that, they've got a lot of high touch. They're involved in their owners. They're an advocate for their owners. And, you know, I would imagine they're also helping choose the right system for the right asset at the right time. And that's why you pay for a management company if they've got those chops. So, you know, again, I think it goes to the top of the hour and top of your questions that we're in the bottom of the beginning. And there's a lot of opportunities. You know, just as you were like saying, oh God, there's so many questions I want to, you've just come up with so many ideas for business models that I hope some students are listening to this. And I hope that the institutions are listening to this, because it is ripe for innovation and adaptation. And with the mega disruption is already done.
Right.
Now we're in that next phase of polishing, professionalizing, and providing. And that's really where the big opportunity is. So, you know, I think it's a wonderful time to enter the TTH market because, you know, we've got labor problems. You know, the UK have short nearly 200,000 jobs in entertainment, tourism, and hospitality. The same thing runs through the rest of Europe. Different situation in the Middle East. We've got situations where consumers, according to a recent survey from May, you know, you're dealing with about 13 and a half hours in the US a year to complain and get stuff done. Right. It takes up to 3 times for 90% of people to actually get somebody to talk to you, and up to 6 times to resolve it. So in some respects, we've got 3 major problems. One, we've got a labor shortage in our space, probably for the foreseeable future. Second, we've got fear of the product that's available. So I hope we don't do nothing. And then you've got, you know, the complexity of the horizon of what are the brands, what aren't the brands, and how that impacts it. So, you know, there's a lot of, that may be the case, but careers and nuance, I mean, it's very exciting, really. If you're
if you're an entrepreneur and you're coming out, I'm actually doing a class. I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Right after this, I'm going downstairs to the lobby and taking the master class from NYU in hospitality, and I'm changing up the game on them because they think I'm going to talk about finance, and I'm going to go opposite. So, and I'm actually going to, anyway, that's another story. And I'll actually tell them, listen to this podcast, because maybe I gave them a couple of great ideas. Right now, if you're an entrepreneur in this space, you can really do something different because there really is too much going on where, and only the big players are going to kind of hold that down. I think there is a real good opportunity for a small player with, you know, that has tech savvy and understands consumer. I'll give you an example to underline what you just said about service. I'm a big Delta fan. I'm still a Delta fan. I'll always be a Delta fan, hopefully. I had one of the biggest problems I've ever had in travel the other day. I missed a very important meeting in Tennessee because they canceled my flight, rebooked my flight, and then I had a boarding pass, and they wouldn't let me on the flight. They said, no, there's a problem, and I missed my flight. Okay, so I said to them, what are you going to do? I'm a Diamond member. I'm not going to yell and scream, but I'm very, very, very upset. They said, we'll give you $200. I was like, take your $200. I said, no, I want you to personalize this experience for me. You know what they said? For the Diamond members, there's a customer service line that you can call, but they're so overwhelmed with complaints that just go online and write a letter.
Yeah, that's what they told me that I have to do, because on July 1st I had to drive all the way to the LaGuardia Airport and go find my luggage. Nobody can help you. It's really sad.
They literally gave up. They literally said that. They said, no one can help you. You can write a letter. Like, that's to your point, Sean. That's like, we've given up.
Yeah.
I mean, the employees, and we're all people that do this. So the employees have really won the battle, but the consumer may start the war.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
Consumers have more choices than ever, particularly in Europe, where you said 65% are unbranded. But owners are having problems too. Now, Manish, I want to talk about this on Thursday, Anthony, when we do an Ask Anthony and Glenn. But he's saying profits are shrinking. Brands need to really rethink brand standards to cut costs. That's sort of an issue as well. I definitely want on Thursday. Let's think about that.
But again,
how we can be creative.
But again, Glenn, you just said something that I think to Sean's. What he just said was amazing about the battle, but the consumers are going to win the war or start the war. I think that's exactly what everyone's saying. Brands are have too many standards. Owners are pissed off. Reduce the standards. What does that do? The rates are as high as they've ever been, and now we've just reduced the brand standard. That's going to piss off the customer. It's going to make the owner happy. The brand doesn't give a crap as long as they're getting their fee.
It depends on the standard.
To what Sean said, consumers, listen, when people like us are pissed off, we've had enough. And because we travel so much, we know, just shut up and deal with the problems. But we're getting to the point where it's like, I missed something that I was working on for years with this owner. Years. And I never travel the same day I'm supposed to have a meeting, ever. Okay, and we had to travel on the same day, and he's a good friend of mine.
Because they canceled your flight the night before, right?
They canceled 3 flights or 2 flights. But my point being is that deal would have happened or not happened. Me and the owner have a good relationship, so we're going to be friends for a long time. That's not the point. If that was something where I was trying to sell my company or whatever, and I was marketing it, and I spent all these years trying to get this deal done, and then I don't show up, like, that is like, you just ruined somebody's business.
Yeah, to your point, Art brought this up this morning, British Airways, right? That stat this morning.
British Airways has completely stopped taking reservations now for short-haul flights. Is that correct, Art?
That's the one, until next Monday, and it'll happen again. But astonishing.
So, it's very interesting that all of these connect, right, Art? Where the other part that I'd add into this, and this is we're in a very complex time. It's like we're coming down from the river, and there's the ocean, and we're all swirling around in the estuary trying to figure out what direction we want to go. And it's even other issues with all the interviews we've been doing recently, either on Adapter Tech X or the adapters, and the personal interviews. We've been working with the interviewees to just tell us what they do between 25 and 50 words, as opposed to 10, 12, 2 paragraphs. And we're time impoverished, and I think a lot of work that we all do is trying to help people to just get there faster and easier and remove some of the friction so that you can focus on what the core is as to where you drive value. And so there's lots of opportunities out there, like you're saying, to solve not just microservices, speaking a bit of tech language, but these micro connections that ultimately make something better. I mean, you compare the moving parts in an electric car versus a moving part in a combustion car, and you just don't have to go to the mechanic that often. For the life of me, it would be great to hear that this company removed these many steps so that the employee and the customer, be it in retail or any of the other categories we were talking about, they went out and said, we removed 22 steps over the last 6 months. We gave back 1 hour to our employees and 20 minutes to our consumers. Wouldn't that be a great story?
Yeah. But now with these new machines, these new cars, you have to go to the MIT grad to figure out the problem on the car.
Oh, come on. I'm not buying that with you. You know how to drive your Tesla, I'm sure.
I am. And Glenn, tell them what I drive and the only thing I drive.
Not a Tesla.
A Volvo.
Is it
It's the
a
only thing I
Volvo?
drive.
Yeah. It's very safe
And
and very gas.
we have three.
gas
The
mileage.
family has 3 Volvos, and every one of them right now, and I love Volvo, is having technical issues.
Oh,
All
God.
right.
Well, to be fair, they did.
If there's
They did
anybody
just
out
start.
there from
Delta
Volvo,
Management is
call in.
running.
Yeah.
So we're starting to run low on time. And Art, you took some great footage of a particular property that you saw as part of the Urban Living
I wouldn't
Festival,
call it great
Anthony.
footage, but it's kind of what is interesting. Yeah, we were in Cove, and I mean, again, having been in Canary Wharf and reintroducing ourselves to Canary Wharf, the amount of green, they're running out of, the whole thing is green space. They're running out of ground. They're running out of roof space. And on the 27th floor of the landmark Pinnacle, this is where Core was, they've just devoted a whole floor to this rainforest. One side there's this sort of kids area, the other side is a more sort of adults area. It was bizarre and lovely and really interesting, but they'd done it. It's quite strange. I mean, what were your thoughts of this, Sean? Oh, there's Piers. There you go.
The property guy in me said, I wonder what return they're going to get per square meter on that. The flip side of it is, the flip side of it is, it's a marketing piece. It certainly is very ESG and very in when they've given up that type of space to an environment. So I think these are experimental, and it's a good story. It may even be a good marketing story.
Yeah, there's a hotel. Somewhere in Orlando. I think it's in Orlando. That kind of has that right in the middle of the lobby. 90% of the lobby is like a rainforest.
Is that like an old Embassy Suites? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
So hey guys,
John Q. Hammond.
I know we have like just a little while, so I have 10 minutes to ask you guys questions. So can I ask questions as adapter people that talk about adapting and kind of what's going to happen in the future? I'm going to ask questions. All right, you ready?
Oh yeah,
go on.
And
Art's ready. Art's ready.
Okay. I was born into this industry at 20 years old, and tomorrow is my first job. And I want everyone to answer, and you can't copy the other person's answer. What is the number one thing that I need to know about being successful in business? Not hospitality business, but business in general. Sean, you go first.
You got to go quicker, Sean. It's too much dead air.
All right. That's okay.
No, take your time, Sean. Take your time.
Yeah.
One is, don't lock yourself into one space and go and experiment for the first 5 years of your life. That's one. Two, be incredibly curious about and ask lots of questions, and have about 2/3 of your time listening and 1/3 opening your mouth. After that, get into TTH and solve the problem.
Yep. TTH is travel, tourism, and hospitality, for those that don't know. Anthony?
That is amazing advice, especially the first 5 years of your life. What do they say? Fail fast. Those 5 years of your life, you fail fast, man. And that's great advice. Art?
Okay, I'm going to add to that. Get good at telling your story. Excel at it. That is my number one piece of advice. Whether that's your personal story, your brand story, your product story. So many people can't do it. So, learn to do that. That's what I do. 95% of my time, my job is telling stories.
And that is so true. I'll give you a very small example. A friend of mine, Joe Isidori, who was co-founding Black Tap. And now he runs a lot of restaurants, but he just started a company called Arthur's and Son Restaurant down in the Village. And he is doing such a beautiful job. Anybody's listening, go to Arthur's and Sons on Instagram. Such a beautiful job of telling his father's story, because his father passed away and he's bringing on his legacy. And he's telling this story over a pan of meatballs or a pan of chicken parmesan, and just beautifully telling this story in these little vignettes on Instagram. And talk about telling your story. So anyway, to back what you're saying up. And Glenn?
Yeah, I would say vanquish any preconceived notions that you bring along with you about how you think things should be. you'll probably be setting yourself up for disappointment, and you also won't have your eyes and ears open for opportunity.
All right.
Yeah, break the rules.
I'm
break the
gonna
rules.
give you my advice, and I've just kind of thought this took me 57 years to figure it out.
All right.
I always say, don't take shit from anybody. Take shit from people you can learn from, but don't take shit from people you can't learn from. So if you're in an environment that's crushing your head, but you're learning, okay, that's okay. Stay there as long as you can suffer through it, learn everything you can, and get the hell out of there. But don't be around mediocre people and taking crap that you're not learning anything. I have one company, Glenn knows the company, I won't say.
Yep.
I learned more from that company in 2 years than I learned from any company, but my head was exploding every day, and I had to take shit on an hourly basis. And I hated my job, but I learned more from those 2 years I've ever learned in my life. So I think that would be my advice.
Did you know that at the time? Or
That's why I took the job. I was offered a job of running a major brand's hotels in New York City, and I said no to that to take this kind of penny pitching job, asset manager job, because it was a level up for me. It was going to challenge me, and it was going to crush me. So I took it knowingly, but I wanted to be around people. I was the dumbest person in the room every day, and I loved it because the time I got out of the room, I wasn't the dumbest person in the room anymore. So I think that the advice we just gave, and Glenn knows this, that's why I'm going to this NYU thing right now. To me, there's no more important thing to do is take young minds and tell them you're not as smart as you think you are, and you're not as dumb as you think you are. You're somewhere in between. And we've all learned that. It's taken us years to learn that, but we've all learned that. You know, I've said it before. I've learned my greatest. Like I talked to my nephew who just graduated engineering school, and I'm just fascinated by his knowledge. And I learn from him just as much as I learn from you guys sometimes.
That's cool. All right, we've got to start wrapping up here because Anthony has got things to do. Plus, we're trying to get these to be a little more economical in size and scope these shows. Guys, do you have any final thoughts on these topics that we've been talking about today before we give you a shameless plug? Sean?
Art, you want to start?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that. The thing I wanted to, again, I'm going to go back to Canary Wharf. The thing that really struck me with that is this idea of a ecosystem, that really came across from Canary Wharf, that they were hiring out a desk for somebody, and they would incubate them until they could sort of take away, rent 3 or 4 floors of one of their buildings.
Right.
There was a lot of that going on, and where do they go for entertainment? Where do they sleep? Where do their family go? It's very, very interesting. And whether or not that's something we're going to see a lot more of elsewhere, I have no idea.
Well, our relationship, I mean, our relationship with urban cores in general is changing. The way that we want, whether or not we're going to be working there and experiencing them, whether or not we want to live there full time. So when you're able to bring in these different options as an owner of that building, you're probably going to wind up in a better place.
Yeah, that's it. So, it's very much that holistic view that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm trying to look up something here. Oh, well, I can't find it. So let's just move on to the shameless plug. Sean, talk to us. What's your plug today, brother?
Well, the plug is, it looks like I'm delayed, but you can probably hear me, which is probably okay. Yeah. So it's, I think a couple of things. One is, Art talked about some soft stuff, but I'm talking about tech. Use it as an enabler rather than a core principle. Enable you to get stuff done. You probably won't be as afraid of it. The second thing is that there is a range of opportunities for people to start new businesses. It's a little harder these days to get funding, but don't let that get in front of your way. And third, once you're all in, you're all in. Put your best at it. And I agree completely with the rest of the advice. Just if you're going to put your back into it, no half measures. Go at it.
Somebody a long time ago said to me, "Don't quit, don't ever quit." And that if you believe in something, it may be your last breath, but it's going to happen. But you have to be disciplined, and you have to be enthusiastic. And to your word, which I love, is my favorite, Sean, curious. if you do those three things, you're going to get there.
Yep. And I would also say, conversely, on the opposite end, also be aware of the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've been doing something for so long and investing in it doesn't mean you should continue to do it. So you have to have a little bit of smarts on whether or not it's a lost cause or that close to the finish line. Right, guys?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we peace out, Sean, plug the book.
Well, the good news has been selling, so somebody wants the adapters.
Yeah.
You can find it on any good or bad book distribution system. So everything from Amazon all the way through distribution. And we will be coming out with some monographs that complement this over the next couple of months. So
Nice.
more updates to follow.
And
Awesome.
we will be at more events as well. We got so much, just that, day and a half at the Urban Living Festival. We just met so many really interesting people, got great content that's really being received really well, isn't it, Sean? So we're getting great feedback on that. So
Yeah, we're
I think
pushing
you'll be seeing a lot
30,000
more of that.
impressions, and I mean the numbers on it are extraordinary. So we're pretty
Yeah.
happy with it.
Awesome. Excellent. And make sure to check out the adapters.net. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully I'll get to see you guys
Thank
in
you.
person instead of virtually all the time.
Well, it's about connecting the dots because that's what we're doing, right?
Yep. I know.
You should have today, but we've seen you virtually. So
Yeah. Oh, well. Yeah, I know. We were supposed to be at an event today in Las Vegas, which was canceled because of a merger that might be taking place. So what are you going to do? All right, guys. See you later. Have a good one.
all right.
Right.
Thanks a
Thank you
Take
million.
care. Bye-bye. All right. So, Anthony, give us your final 2 cents before we get out of here.
Well, first of all, thank you to my friends at the Marriott Marquis for hosting me today and allowing me to use the space.
Yep.
And second, don't listen to anybody, man. Just do what you want to do in life. And you have more resources than anyone has ever had on planet Earth ever. If you want information, you can find it. So,
and I know one place to find it. That, of course, would be the audio podcast feed. Get a collection of all our interviews. Find it at Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, wherever you get your shows. We are there for you. And for some bizarre reason, for not, let us know. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. All right, everybody. Remember, you got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
see y'all tomorrow.